Boss, thank you for joining us. Let's recap on the transfer market and we'll start with Lawrence Figueroa, the goalkeeper who came in that first week.
Yes, first and foremost, delighted that it's shut. Stressful, phone don't stop ringing, haven't had a minute's peace on top of all the new experiences of being a head coach at a football club. So I'm delighted that it's closed because it gives us a chance to breathe. I think we've signed well in the transfer window, but I think it started off obviously with the recruitment of Lawrence Figueroa, a personality that I felt was going to really impose himself on the group, larger than life character, bubbly and energetic around the place. I felt he would come in and give everybody a new energy, and a fantastic goalkeeper. I think for me, we've signed a goalkeeper that's capable of a hell of a lot in his career. Probably so far hasn't quite, albeit he spent his time at Liverpool and Tottenham, hasn't quite reached the heights, and I'm hoping and I believe in him that he can become a fantastic goalkeeper first and foremost to this club, but this could be the real start of something big for him.
And second was the extension of George Marsh's loan. Of course, we originally captured him in the summer until January, and then extending that was massive. I feel in recent weeks he's shown real versatility in playing in that right back role. Of course, he's predominantly a midfielder.
Yeah, it's easy to forget sometimes, isn't it, when you re-sign a loan or re-sign a player in January that you've already had with it, that he's a new signing, or he's an existing signing. So I think George has shown a lot of strong characteristics this year. It's easy that we can sit and say that it's his first loan experience. He's come from a huge club, and I think it can't be underestimated how tough it is to come into this environment from where he's come from and embrace the challenge. There's so many different things that change. The style of football, the edge of playing week in, week out for points and trying to win games and having the pressure of supporters and people following you is a massive thing for a young player to have to embrace. And I knew that when we were signing that George had those types of characteristics that were going to help him be able to cope at this level of football. It took him a bit of time to get in the team, but I think once he did, he's shown his qualities. We've adapted the way that he plays because we probably signed him as a bit more of a holding midfield player, and we've evolved him into playing a little bit further up the pitch on occasions. And then, as you say, in recent weeks, he's shown real versatility to play in a position that I know he can play in, but to go in there and take it by the scruff of the neck. And I think he's been extremely comfortable, and I'm delighted to be able to have renewed that loan.
And then Cisse was next through the door, the midfielder who joined on loan from Gillingham.
Yeah, I think when you sign players in January, 9 times out of 10, or very often, you don't sign a player that's been playing football on a regular basis because he would stay in his team that he's with or he's at. So unless you're going out and paying huge transfer fees for players. So I think when we signed Cisse, obviously a lot of our analysis was done off of video clips, research once we knew he was available, of players that he played with, coaches, managers that he'd worked with, and we really made sure that we dug deep to find out what his personality was about and bit more about the type of player that he was outside of all the footage that we've been able to analyse, and we were pleasantly surprised with the feedback that we got. I think Us has come into the squad straight away, and we've thrown him into the deep end. We've had to be really cautious with him, and I know that I personally have wanted to see him on the pitch a little bit longer, but we have a duty of care to him that we don't push him too much, and he suffers injury. So I think he's embraced that well. I think we've managed him pretty well, and I think the performances that he's put in the early stages since he's walked into the club have been great. But I think what he's also done is he's embraced the group. He's come in. He's brought a maturity to the group. He's brought an experience to the group, and a different one than perhaps we've already got here. So I think from what people see on the pitch, everybody's been delighted with so far. But what he brings to the training ground and the changing room has been really good so far.
And as recently as Monday, early in the week, Danny Johnson arrived from Dundee FC on an 18-month contract. That's a player that you said this club's had their eyes on for a little while now.
Yeah, I think what it does for Danny is and for us is it shows us that intent over a longer period of time. I'm sure people will sit there and be a bit frustrated that there might be a few loans come in and that sort of thing, but I think it's, again, touching on what I've already said about the transfer market, it makes it a very difficult window to manage because you've got people that are up at the end of the season with their contracts, not up at the end of the season, young players coming through, and to recruit players sometimes is difficult for the longer term. But with Danny, he's someone that we've followed and researched and seen play against us when we were in the National League. We know that he scores goals. We know what his strengths are, and in the past we have been very close to signing him before. So we felt that making Danny a longer term signing, an 18-month contract, an intent for next year, was a real good opportunity for us to add to the group and build for the longer term. So as we say, a lot of a bigger process that went into to finally getting Danny as a Leyton Orient player, but we feel as though we've signed a real good goal scorer and somebody that's going to, as always, add something to this group and drive us on.
And finally, today through the door, another loan signing, Kazeem Sterling from Tottenham again. He's arrived. He's played in the Champions League. He's a really promising young player, and he's come from Tottenham.
There's a number of things that mean that the signing of Kazeem Sterling is a very, very big one for us. Right now he's suffering a bit of an injury, but I feel as though once he returns to that, we're signing a player, like you said, with incredible potential, a real good CV for a lad of his age already. The great thing for me is that Kazeem is a player that I know. I signed him here as an 8-year-old at the academy, or the Centre of Excellence as it was at the time. I sold him to Tottenham as a 11, 12-year-old. I worked with him at Tottenham when I moved from Orient to Tottenham. So he's a player that I know what qualities he's got. I know his personality, I know his background, and he's Leyton Orient. Albeit that it was 10 years ago that he moved from here, but he's a boy that knows this club well. He's a boy that knows me well. It allows us to develop a good relationship and a potential further relationship with Tottenham in terms of the recruitment of their loan players. So I think first and foremost we're getting a good player. Secondly, we're getting a really good lad that understands what this club is about and understands Leyton Orient. And then thirdly, it allows us to build a very strong relationship with one of the biggest clubs in the country, if not the world, that's pretty much on our doorstep, and always going to have players that we'd be very, very keen to bring in and aid with their development, as we are doing with George Marsh and Kazeem.
At last night's event, an evening with Nigel Travis, Martin Ling had said it's my job in a transfer window to make sure that we're stronger once we get to the end of it. He says he feels that has happened. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I wasn't at the event, but I think it's certainly the way we all want to come for a transfer window. We want to re-energise the place. I think you want to keep evolving. So you need to make sure that, yes, we had a group that got promotion last year, but we need to continue to strive to get better. That's not selling short the players that are already in the building. We need to keep driving those players on and bringing in new faces. I think not only good players that make you a better player, a better team, a better squad, it re-energises people. It brings a new challenge. It brings an extra edge and a fight for places. And I think if you look at the players that we've brought in now, there's not very many people in the squad. There's not very many positions in the squad where anyone's not looking over their shoulder wondering who's going to step in. I've got to perform every week. Obviously we suffer 1 or 2 injuries at the moment, but certainly once those players come back in, there's intense competition for places, which ultimately is what it's all about, knowing that if you don't perform well, that people are going to be knocking on the door ready to step into your shoes. And I think the club have supported us to bring in the players that we want. It's taken us a period of time, but we have to get those things right, and we have to understand as well that sometimes we're a League 2 football club trying to recruit the players that we want, but sometimes people and players are waiting to see what other opportunities are out there. So we have to be focused on what we want. We have to stick to our plan, and I think from Martin and the board doing that, we've brought in some really good players that are going to make us improve for the rest of the season.
Perfect. Thank you very much, boss.